Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Screenaholic. Wait until somebody shows? Roger Sergeant. Let's jump right in. This happened around 2018, give or take a year. I was in my mid-20s in the US Army Infantry and my rank was Specialist, one above Private First Class. Same pay as Corporal, but none of the responsibility. I was stationed on Schofield Barracks in Hawaii, which is a pretty small post. Now, for those of you not familiar with Army life, we do have a day-to-day job. We have to do daily physical training every morning with our platoons, then go eat breakfast and shower before being back by 9 AM in uniform to do whatever menial task leadership tells us to that day. Occasionally, you get pulled away from the company for work details that higher levels of organization need done. For example, battalion needs X done and needs Y soldiers to do it, so battalion tells each company to send Z soldiers, and each company tells each platoon to send N soldiers. Details can last from an hour to over a month, and usually involve cleaning or organizing something. The thing is, sometimes details get lost in this game of telephone. So one day my squad leader tells me I'm getting put on a detail for the next 2 weeks. I'll do PT with the platoon, but then at 9 I'll report to this address and do whatever they need done. He vaguely says it's something about a warehouse, but he doesn't know what I'll be doing. Roger Sergeant, not a problem. So next Monday after PT, I get dressed, put on my uniform, and head to the address. It's not a 5-minute drive from my house. I'm married, so I'm out of the barracks. I show up a few minutes early like a good soldier and see it's a bunch of warehouses in a chain link fence with a locked gate, with no one else around. No problem, chill in my car until someone arrives. 9:15 rolls around and no one shows. I text my squad leader to double check the time and address. He says yes, you're at the right place and time, wait until someone arrives. Roger Sergeant. 1100, I'm still just screwing around on my phone in my car. No one in sight. Text Sergeant again, tell him no one has shown up. He tells me to be back after lunch, someone will come. Roger Sergeant. 1300 hours. Come back after having lunch with my wife, still no one. Wait 30 minutes and text him again. Sergeant says that I'm supposed to be there for 2 weeks, someone will show up. Just wait. Roger Sergeant, I'll stop bothering you. So I wait another hour and a half, and then the highest ranking person there, me, dismisses the detail, also me, for the day. Sergeant seemed sure that's where I'm supposed to be, so that's where I went for the next 2 weeks. I stopped bothering him and just showed up at the warehouse every day at 9. Every day I took my lunches earlier and longer, and every day I let myself go home sooner. By the end, I think I spent less than 2 hours a day at the detail. But Sergeant told me to show up, and that's what I did. About a month later, I get put on another detail, and by another detail, I mean the one I was supposed to be on to begin with. I spent 2 weeks with like 10 other soldiers, cleaning out the battalion's spare storage warehouse. My guess is, either my squad leader was given the wrong date, or the detail was pushed back a month from the original date, and my SL didn't get the memo. No one ever seemed to question why I was needed for the detail I already did. So this is what we refer to as a snafu. Situation normal, all effed up. It sounds to me like what OP really got out of this was a 2-week working vacation. I mean, they only had to do 2 hours a day. That's not bad at all. We have so many military stories here, it kind of makes you wonder how the military even functions properly when we hear all of the bad sides of it on these subreddits. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This next story comes to us from Camos Darkfly. That's not how the world works. Let's jump right in. So this happened more than 14 years ago, but I don't remember exactly how long ago. It involves myself and a Canadian-American office supply chain store that almost rhymes with maple syrup. A little bit of backstory is necessary before we get to the meat though. It's lengthy, so I hope you don't mind. Way back when, in the stone age of my IT career, I was hired as a floor associate for this office supply store. It wasn't the position I'd applied for, but that'll change later. I applied for a position as an in-store computer tech. It wasn't long before my aptitude for the internal workings of computers became apparent, and one day, the store manager asked me into the tech office to help deal with the massive backlog of computers in for service that the actual tech, who only worked a few hours a week, couldn't handle. I went through these tickets in relatively short order, turning the machines around and clearing the bench, so to speak. At this point, the store decided to make me the full-time tech. That was fine by me. That's what I wanted in the first place. Unfortunately, when you let computers languish as long as this store had and never do any marketing, the business doesn't come in very fast. I'd already moved to have some aggressive in-store marketing done by floor associates, along with enforcing certain company policies that were lax before, and things started to slowly turn around. Not fast enough for the store though, who cut my hours back to 3 days a week. I applied for and worked other jobs to make up the difference. Over the next several months, I gradually built the store's tech services up from being bottom of the barrel to one of the top grossing stores in the region, edging out larger and more well-established stores. We had a reputation for fast and efficient service, along with saving the customer time and money by handling anything that didn't require the warranty department in store. This further increased our store profits, and it wasn't long before the district management took notice and gave recognition to me personally. Of course, all this effort comes at a cost, and it wasn't long before my day was full, from beginning to end. I was still working the other part-time job, which offered higher pay, but fewer hours, so it balanced out to being equal to the store job on fewer days. So I couldn't add more days to my store schedule without sacrificing my weekend, something I was unwilling to do. I started working extra hours, usually clocking in a shift anywhere from 10 to 14 hours. Business continued to explode, and it wasn't long before I was working lunches at my workbench too. Throughout all this, the store never bothered to hire a second tech. I didn't mind, I got paid, and it averaged out to a full 5-day job, and it was pennies compared to the money I was directly making the store. Here's where the malicious compliance comes in. After about 6 months of this, the department manager came to me and stated that they could no longer afford to pay me overtime, despite tech work sales being higher than the store had ever seen, and my pay still being less than or equal to what they'd have to pay me to work full-time for them. They didn't even offer to put me back to full-time and or raise my pay, just told me to clock out at my scheduled time. So I did. I clocked out and went home right when I was scheduled. Computer on the bench? It got left until my next workday. Ticket not updated? Maybe the notes are on my desk and I clocked out before entering them into the system. I was always gone by my scheduled time, not a minute later. I also stopped working on my lunch break. Work times on the bench went through the roof, and it wasn't long before management started getting complaints from floor associates who had to deal with angry customers not having their computers within a respectable length of time. One even called head office to complain after their computer was sitting with no news for 2 weeks. It was only 3 weeks and a huge disaster later that they finally relented and said I could work as long as I wanted. It didn't last, and a few months later, I transferred stores before quitting for greener fields entirely. I still drive by that store and wonder how well they're doing without me, and it's been 11 years. Okay, so this is obviously a staple store, and I'm still having trouble wondering why OP said maple syrup for the rhyming part, because the syrup part doesn't rhyme with anything in Staples. Good work, OP. I know from experience working for that particular store that one hand generally doesn't know what the other one's doing, and they definitely don't like paying out overtime hours at all. OP was lucky to move on to greener pastures, and judging by the comments down below this one, they have absolutely no more ties to retail tech support. This next story comes to us from Janelle. Insurance companies absolutely make no sense. Let's jump right in. Here's a bit of malicious compliance for you regarding insurance. My son has severe cerebral palsy. He is predominantly wheelchair bound unless we put him into his stander. This is a device that we can strap him into and tilt it up into a position that has him standing instead of sitting. We use that piece of equipment with him every day for at least an hour, sometimes twice a day. It's a vital part of his daily activities. Well, because we use that stander so much, the safety belt and harness have both worn out. I put in a request to our medical equipment vendor to order us a new set of belts and harness so he can continue using his stander. This should have been no problem, as it's just a replacement part for existing equipment that our insurance has previously bought. The vendor did that, but I got a letter from insurance denying the claim. I called Aetna to find out what was going on. The person who took the call said that they will no longer pay for replacement parts. For the record, the hip belt is $252 and the chest harness is $175, a mere $427 replacement order for them versus several thousands if I were to order a whole new stander. I spent an hour arguing with her about how the safety equipment is worn out and it's not safe to use it without them because he would simply fall out of it. That it is vital to its use to have those items. She suggested I pay for them out of pocket, and again, she reiterated that the policy no longer covers replacement parts for equipment. A light bulb finally flipped on in my head. I asked if I were to order a whole new stander, will my policy cover it? She said yes, so that's exactly what I've done. I emailed via MyChart to my son's PMR doctor requesting the prescription for a new stander to be sent to the vendor. At the vendor appointment, we got squeezed in 2 weeks later. I told them what all happened on the phone call with Aetna. Both the therapist and the vendor's rep at the appointment busted out laughing. My son now has a pending order for a brand new Lecky stander with a motorized hydraulic lifting system, new activity tray, and all the safety harnesses and belts, including extra thigh supports, for an approximate total of $5,900 for all these bells and whistles. 3 days ago, I got a call from the equipment vendor telling me that the order has been approved and the equipment is being ordered from the manufacturer. I expect to have it delivered in a few more weeks depending on logistics. Thanks, Aetna. I only wanted a $252 hip belt and $175 chest harness, but we will gladly use a whole new stander that Aetna has to pay at 100% because our yearly deductible has been met due to his medical condition. So Aetna has to pay almost $6,000 instead of $425. I plan on donating the other stander, which is only 4.5 years old, to Shriners Hospital. Hopefully one of their patients can benefit from it. In this case, it sounds like OP and the hospital they donated the old equipment to both came out on top. OP got their brand new equipment, which will help increase the quality of their son's life, and the hospital got the older equipment that I'm sure they'll have no problem ordering the replacement parts for. OP, way to stick it to the insurance company. I mean, if their policies are that bad, then they had it coming. This next story comes to us from Mallory454, truck driving on a salary. Let's jump right in. This one is from decades ago, otherwise it would get me in deep doo-doo. I worked as a truck driver in the mid-90s. The company I worked for, can't name them here, but their favorite color is orange, decided to try out a new pay package. The details were complex, but it basically replaced the standard pay per mile with a set weekly salary, and not a good one. The new package was instituted on a small-scale trial. The company quickly realized that they could make a lot of money if they didn't have to pay their drivers, and the package became the company standard. Because of the complexity of the package, please don't ask, it took the drivers a few weeks to figure out we were getting screwed. Then we started fighting back. A couple of things you need to understand about a truck driver's work week. There are 4 lines on a DOT, Department of Transportation logbook. Lines 3 and 4 constitute the hours we can work daily and weekly. 10 hours, now 11, driving per day, 70 hours driving and other duties, line 4, per 7-day week. In order to maximize our income, we put as little time as possible on line 4, for which we normally did not get paid, and logged the maximum legal speed on line 3, driving, even if we couldn't actually drive that speed due to weather, traffic, terrain, etc. While this was of course illegal and impossible with current electronic logs, it wasn't a secret. As long as your logbook was neat and showed you driving at or under the speed limit, the DOT inspectors wouldn't give you a hard time about it. They had more than enough work with the drivers who were wildly abusing the rules. Once we were put on a salary, weekly earnings drop of about 33%, we had no incentive to cheat. Examples: a run from Portland, Oregon to San Francisco, California is 635 miles. You could log this as one day at 550 miles, 55 miles per hour times 10 hours, leaving you 85 miles. 85 divided by 55 equals 1.75 hours logged the next day. That would leave you 8.25 hours to drive on day 2 after your delivery. Of course, the reality was quite different. There are some 300 miles of mountains along the route. With 45,000-pound load, you only averaged about 35 miles per hour through them. And anyone who has lived in the San Francisco Bay Area can tell you how likely you are to be able to drive 55 miles per hour at 8 a.m. Under the new pay package, we logged it as it actually happened. The result being that I would arrive in San Francisco in time to make my morning delivery and be out of hours to run for the rest of the day, for which I had to be paid. Not only did the company have to pay me to sit for the day, they had usually booked a load for me that day. It took a while for the load planners to catch on. That either had to be covered by another driver or lost entirely. Now, all those things we had glossed over in order to keep moving got tossed into the company gears. You lost 3 hours throwing chains and driving across Mountain Pass at 25 miles per hour, and now you can't make a Friday delivery. So sorry, no more hours to drive. And the receiver isn't open on weekends? Not my problem. Cargo receivers didn't care much for it either. A lot of them would use the threat of not being unloaded in a timely manner to force drivers into abusive situations. I can remember with great fondness telling a number of them that I didn't care if they ever unloaded me. I got paid the same either way. That got back to the company, but as long as I was complying with DOT rules, there was nothing anyone could do about it. Also removed one of the big hammers the company would use to threaten the drivers. That is a reduction in miles dispatched. Fleet managers sure didn't like that aspect of the pay package. All this occurred 6 months before my 3-year anniversary with the company. At the 3-year point, my 401k vested and I got my last 2 weeks of vacation pay. I figured during that 6 months, I just about broke even on what I lost in wages. The salary pay package lasted about a year before all the problems it caused forced the company to return to pay per mile. Writing this story out has reminded me of all the other things this company did while I worked there. I will save those for future posts. This is the true definition of malicious compliance. The company changes the rules, and you follow the rules exactly as they've told you to, regardless of the consequences for the company. This story is a clear indication that the people in management for this company have never actually driven a truck themselves. They have no idea what it's like to actually be in a truck out on the road, and thus there's no way they can effectively manage their drivers. Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.